Okay, so we're diving into the 48 laws of power. And today we're going to unpack Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others. We both looked over your notes. We get the basics. But one thing that really hit me was how different this law seemed from, say, Machiavelli. Is it like a totally different approach to power, or is there like a deeper connection?
Oh, that's a really good place to start. Yeah, you see, while Machiavelli is all about like strategy and force and being cunning, this Law 43, it goes a little deeper. It's suggesting that real lasting power comes from something more like Mauchad. It's about getting into people's emotions and hopes and even their fears.
So instead of just like outward control, it's about shaping how people see things from the inside.
Exactly. Think about it like this. When you force someone, they might do what you want for a little bit. But inside, they're going to be angry. They might obey you. But underneath, they're just waiting for a chance to break free.
It's that difference between just obeying and really believing right.
Exactly. Law 43 says real power is in winning people over, not just making them do what you want. You want them to want to follow you, not just because they have to.
Our notes mentioned Emperor Augustus as a perfect example of how this law worked. He took over right after Julius Caesar was assassinated. It was a time when Rome could have easily fallen apart.
Augustus, he's a really fascinating case study. He could have easily just used force. Everyone was scared and unsure. He could have used that to make himself even more powerful. But he did something completely different.
So what did he do? Did he like give a bunch of big speeches?
Oh, he was way more strategic than that. He knew that if he wanted to stay in power, it wasn't about scaring people. It was about winning them over. So he started this huge campaign to rebuild Rome, not just the buildings, but like the whole idea of Rome. He built these big public projects, made the city beautiful, and made people feel like they were all in this together.
So it sounds like he was creating like a story that people wanted to be a part of.
You got it. He was changing how the public saw things, appealing to their feelings and what they wanted for the future. And by doing that, he got their loyalty and started a time of peace and prosperity that had never been seen before.
That's amazing. He went from a guy who could have been a dictator to a leader that everyone loved just by understanding how to influence people.
Exactly. He knew that people are way more likely to follow someone who makes them feel hopeful and safe and like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
It's like he understood the psychology of leadership way before we even had a word for it.
Right. And this is where we start to see those two big strategies of Law 43. The first one is understanding what people feel and what they want. What scares them? What are their dreams? What do they want to achieve in life? What makes them tick?
So it's about really getting to know your audience, not just like on the surface, but on a deeper level.
Exactly. And once you understand those things, then you can start to craft your message. You can talk to them in a way that really connects with them. You can tap into their hopes, address their fears, and offer them a way to reach their goals.
This makes me think about some of the biggest brands out there. Companies like Apple, Tesla, Disney, they're not just selling stuff. They're selling an experience, values, a feeling of belonging to something.
You're absolutely right. They've totally mastered the second strategy of Law 43, giving people a sense of belonging and purpose. They make their customers feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, part of a movement or a tribe that believes in the same things they do.
They make these whole worlds that people want to be a part of. Like you're not just buying an iPhone, you're buying into the whole Apple thing. Or you're not just driving a Tesla, you're part of their mission to change the world.
Exactly. They've figured out how to connect with those deep human needs, to feel connected, to have a purpose, to mean something. And that's what makes those brands so powerful.
It's so cool to see how this law that's so old still works today. It just shows that human nature doesn't really change even if the technology does.
You're right. The basic principles of how to influence people haven't changed. It doesn't matter if you're a Roman emperor trying to stay in power or a brand trying to get loyal customers.
So we've got this idea that force just makes people resist. But if you understand people and speak to their emotions, you can build real loyalty. We've seen it in ancient Rome and in brands today. But what about leaders and movements that use this law for good?
Well, for that, we have the amazing example of Mahatma Gandhi. He led India's fight for independence using nonviolent resistance. And that strategy was all about the principles of Law 43. Instead of fighting violence with more violence, Gandhi knew that real power came from winning over the hearts and minds of the people.
Didn't he say something like, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others? That seems like the whole idea behind what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Gandhi believed that if he spoke to people's conscience, their sense of fairness, and their shared humanity, It would be way more effective than any kind of force.
So he wasn't just trying to win a political fight. He was trying to inspire people to wake up morally.
Exactly. And it worked. His movement got millions of Indians involved and eventually led to India becoming independent from Britain.
Gandhi's story is so inspiring, but in our notes there was also a big contrast to Gandhi. Nicolae Ceausescu, the dictator of Romania.
Yeah, Ceausescu's story is like a warning. It shows what happens when a leader ignores how people think and feel. He ruled Romania with an iron fist. You know, no one could disagree with him. He controlled all the media and demanded everyone obey him.
And he was overthrown in a violent revolution.
That's right. Ceausescu's way of ruling by fear completely backfired. He might have had control for a while, but he created so much anger and resentment that it eventually exploded. His downfall shows us that if you ignore how people feel, it's a recipe for disaster.
It seems like both Augustus and Gandhi understood that real power comes from building genuine connections with people, while Ceausescu made the mistake of thinking he could stay in control just by using force.
Exactly. And that brings us to the question of how we can use Law 43 in our own lives.
Hmm.
Whether we're leading a team, building a business, or just trying to be more persuasive every day, understanding this law can be incredibly powerful.
Okay, so let's say I want to try and actually use this Law 43. Where do I even start? How do I work on those hearts and minds and do it in a way that actually works but is also, ethical?
That's the big question. And it all starts with really getting to know the people you're dealing with, not just their age or their job title, but like what makes them tick? What are they afraid of? What do they dream about? What keeps them up at night? And what are they working towards?
You're saying it's got to be deeper than just surface stuff, right? It's about understanding their psychology.
Exactly. Think of it this way. If you can figure out those core things that drive them, your message isn't about convincing them anymore. It's about aligning with them. You're speaking their language, not just the words, but like their emotions and values.
So instead of trying to make them see things my way, I'm finding a way to connect where we already agree on goals and values.
Exactly. It's like finding that common ground, that
Yeah.
shared goal that can get us both moving. And that's where authentic influence comes in. It's not about tricks or manipulation. It's about genuine connection.
Okay. Authenticity, that's key.
hmm
But what's that look like in real life? How do I make sure when I try to connect with people, it doesn't come off as fake or manipulative?
That's where knowing yourself really well comes in. You can't fake authenticity.
Mm.
It has to come from a place of really caring about the people you're talking to.
So it's about being true to myself and my own values and letting that guide how I interact with people.
Exactly. People can tell when you're not being real, but when you are genuine, when what you say and do matches what you believe, that creates trust and connection. And that's really powerful.
That makes me think about times I've been really inspired by someone. It was never because they were trying to pressure me or trick me. It was because they were so passionate and real about what they were saying. It was contagious.
You got it. Passion is a huge part of influence. When people see that you really believe in something, they're way more likely to believe it too.
Our notes also talked about using stories, symbols, and emotions to paint a picture of something people can believe in. This seems really important for leadership.
Oh, absolutely. We humans, we love stories. We connect with the characters, the emotions, the journey. Think about all the great leaders and movements in history. They all had these powerful stories that caught people's imaginations and got them to act.
Like Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. It wasn't just a list of policies. It was this powerful picture of a better future, full of emotion and hope. It gave people something to believe in, something to fight for.
Exactly. That's the power of a good story. It gets past all the intellectual stuff and connects with people on a deeper level and makes them believe in your vision and want to join you.
So it's not just about giving facts and figures. It's about weaving them into a story that people can feel, a story that connects with their hopes and dreams.
Exactly. Facts are important, but they don't really move people the way a story can. And when you combine a good story with real passion, that's when you have something really powerful.
This all makes sense for leaders and movements. But what about building a business? How do you create that sense of belonging and purpose in a company?
That's a great question. And it's something the best companies have figured out. They know that people want to be a part of something bigger. They want to feel like their work means something.
That's more than just showing up and getting a paycheck.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about building a culture where people feel valued, respected, and connected to what the company believes in.
In the notes, it mentioned companies like Tesla, Disney, and Apple. They're all about making people feel like they belong.
They're perfect examples. Tesla, They've tapped into this global desire for sustainable transportation. They've made themselves the leader of that movement. Their employees aren't just building cars, they're building the future.
And Disney, they've created this whole world of magic.
Exactly. And Apple, they're known for being innovative and having great design. They attract the most talented people in tech. Working at Apple isn't just a job, it's a chance to be a part of something that's pushing the boundaries.
It sounds like they've all found a way to connect with their employees on a deeper level. They make them feel like they're part of something special.
Exactly. They've created a community, a shared identity, and a belief in what the company is trying to do. It goes way beyond just a job.
So it's not just about getting the best people to work for you. It's about keeping them excited and motivated and making sure they believe in the company's vision for the long haul.
Exactly. When people feel like they're a part of something meaningful, they're going to be more loyal, more productive, and more committed to the company's success.
This all makes sense, but it makes me wonder. We've talked a lot about how powerful it is to appeal to people's emotions, but isn't that kind of dangerous? Couldn't it be used to manipulate people?
That's a really good point. And that's why it's so important to be authentic. When you're really trying to connect with people, to understand them and what they want, and to create something that helps everyone, that's not manipulation at all.
So it's about using this knowledge in a good way, ethically and with a real desire to make things better.
Absolutely. Law 43 is a powerful tool. But like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It's up to each of us to use it wisely and with integrity.
That's a great point. It reminds us that influence itself isn't good or bad. It's all about what you're trying to do with it.
Exactly. And when you use the ideas of Law 43 with a strong sense of right and wrong and a real desire to help others,
Yeah.
you can do amazing things.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We've gone from ancient Rome to modern brands. We've talked about stories and even how to use influence ethically. I feel like I really understand Law 43 now and how it works in the real world.
I'm glad to hear that. And I hope you can take what we've talked about and use it in your own life, whether you're leading a team, building a business, or just trying to be more persuasive.
I definitely will. But before we finish up, I'm curious about one more thing from Law 43, the idea of avoiding unnecessary force.
Yeah,
It says you got to avoid using force if you don't need it. Like if you've done a good job winning people over, they believe in what you're doing and they want to follow you, then you don't need to force them at all.
exactly. It goes back to that idea that real power comes from inside people, not from someone making them do something. When you can inspire people to do things because they truly believe in it, then you don't need to control them or make them do things they don't want to do.
So it's about getting them excited to act, not
Mhm.
forcing them to comply, right?
You got it. Think of it this way. Force always creates pushback. It makes people resent you and want to rebel. But inspiration, that's different. Inspiration creates this energy, this shared purpose that pulls everyone forward together.
That makes me think about the difference between a micromanager and a real leader. A micromanager is always trying to control every little thing, and that creates an environment where people are afraid and don't trust each other. But a good leader trusts their team and gives them the freedom to do their thing. They focus on helping their team grow and develop.
That's a great way to put it. The micromanager might get people to do what they want for a little bit, but they'll never see the best their team can do. Because real creativity and innovation, that comes from trust and freedom, not from fear and being controlled.
So it's about creating a culture where people feel appreciated and respected and inspired to do their best, not because they have to, but because they want to.
Exactly. And that way of leading is way better for everyone. Because when people are motivated from within, when they feel like they own their work and it has meaning, that's when they can do amazing things.
That takes us right back to the power of connection, of really understanding what makes people tick. It's about speaking to their hearts and minds, not just to their sense of duty or fear.
Absolutely. And that's why this Law 43 is still so important today, even though it was written so long ago. It's a reminder that real power comes from being able to influence people, to inspire them and motivate them to do great things together.
This deep dive into Law 43 has been amazing. We've covered so much. From ancient Rome to today's biggest brands, we talked about the power of stories and how to use influence in a good way.
Yeah. And most importantly, we've talked about how to use these principles in our own lives, whether we're leading a team, starting a business, or just interacting with people every day.
Before we wrap up, is there one last thing you want to leave our listener with? Something for them to think about as they keep learning about power and influence.
I'd ask them to think about the leaders, the brands, or even the movements they really admire. Do those things force them to follow? Or do they inspire them to join in? What does that tell them about what real power is?
Wow, that's a great question. It makes us think about the kind of influence we want to have in our own lives. Do we want to control people, or do we want to inspire them?
It's up to each of us. And the more we understand and use Law 43, the closer we get to a world where power isn't about dominating or controlling, but about empowering, uplifting, and inspiring.
That's a powerful thought, and something I think we can all work towards. Thanks so much for joining us today. Your insights have been incredible, and I know our listener has learned so much from you.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, next time you need to convince someone or lead a group, ask yourself, am I forcing or inspiring? Choose inspiration and you'll unlock a power that's way stronger than any force could ever be.
That's a perfect note to end on. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.